RotoBallers, we are back for the Valero Texas Open, and we all just got done watching Caitlin Clark absolutely dominate, and the girls from Iowa, my girls from Iowa, in the cornfield here, just taking care of LSU in a epic fashion, just like Spencer Aguiar, my main man, Tee Off Sports, took care of last week's tournament with Steven Yeager, taking it down at 50-1. So Spencer, you've had your third winner. The PGA RotoBaller show has had its fourth winner. I'm kind of calling an audible on myself there because I'm adding myself to the mix there. But you are on fire this week and this year, my friend. How are you? How's the year? Just give me every feeling you've got right now.
Byron, first of all, we are a team here, so we will call it 4.
I've got the $100 bill shirt on, Spencer, for you.
I appreciate that. And we're going to a tournament here at the Valero that I've talked about quite frequently, of this being really, for me, my coming out party, where I think I started getting notoriety when I had Corey Connors at 250-1 in 2019. So we have good feels right now heading into this week. It's kind of what we always talk about, Byron, when it comes to one of the ways I build my model is I'm always trying to find the expected strokes gain putting that I have for a specific surface and compare it to the baseline. It's how I landed on Scotty Scheffler at the API. We talked last week during this show how Steven Yeager, I even noted this about Andrew Novak to an extent, I believe. Obviously, Yeager was the one that won, but anytime that you can get one of these ball strikers that has a positive increase in their trajectory for putting on that course, that's how a ball striker wins a golf tournament. So taking down Scotty Scheffler is doing it the hard way, and Scotty missing that putt. Did not see that one coming. Once he stuck it to like 5 to 6 feet there, I figured the putt was going to go in, but Yeager, this has been a long time coming. I don't think you get 6 Korn Ferry wins without being an elite golfer, and he's added distance to his game over the past 12 months, and we've really seen this with the results. Good golfers end up winning golf tournaments when they get themselves in contention enough times. So I thought he was the one name last week that drifted too far on the odds board from where he should have been. I think last week, like if you put him at 25 or 28-1, he's unbettable at that number, but they drifted him up to 50. So we were able to fortunately grab a mispricing there and land on the winner.
3 things. I can remember the 2 that I was thinking about, going back to what you wanted to say. First, Spence, you mentioned how you went to Yeager because he saw an increase in his baseline, increase on putting surfaces at this golf course compared to his baseline. For people that aren't like heavy into the stats and, don't know exactly what you're speaking about, kind of getting into golf betting and golf stats, dumb it down for us a little bit and kind of explain exactly what that means.
So I run everything from a long-term duration of time, and it's going to take every single strokes gain putting output that I have in my model when we have strokes gain data available. And it's going to give me my expected strokes gain for a golfer in all the critical metrics. If we break it down to just putting there, I'm going to look to see what the expected strokes gain putting is for every single golfer on their totality of the baseline, not looking course specific into it. I like to get deeper into my model and look course specific. So, every single venue has different green complexes. They have a different nature of how the ball rolls. Some will be quicker, some will be slower. You're going to have firm surfaces. You're going to have softer surfaces. And I try to take an expected baseline on that specific green complex that is being played that week. And it doesn't always work. There's a lot of times where I've backed Steven Yeager and he hasn't won the golf tournament, and he's lost 5 strokes putting, but it's that profile that I'm looking for over and over again of these names where I know the ball striking is going to be there. And all we need is that heightened increase with the putter where they gain 3, 4, 5 strokes. And then all of a sudden you have the outright winner there, specifically when you can get a large price. So I think that's a really important thing that a lot of people don't do. It's like we just run numbers based off of the generic totals that are being thrown out there, and we're not necessarily highlighting it for the specific venue that we're playing that week. And I think that's one of the ways that you can get a massive advantage is understanding the course conditions, understanding what the course is asking, and then building a model that's more suited towards that venue, and maybe not taking the rudimentary approach of this is how many strokes a guy gains with his approach game. Like, we'll go to that sector for a second.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice to know how many strokes he gains, but like you go deep into this with some of the rough proximity and some of those and the good shot percentages, but like, how do you gain strokes from this certain distance? How do you gain strokes on these courses where there's going to be a lot of rough that comes into play? So I think when you can build a model like that, you just have such an advantage, whether it's for DFS or betting. And like I said, you're not always going to get it correct, but when the weeks you do, it looks really good on the output. And it was across the board. It wasn't just Jaeger. Like, it's the best DFS week I had. Pretty much across the board, everything that we wanted to see came to fruition. So very exciting tournament last week.
Dude, I'm so proud of you. And I'm saying that as if you suck at golf. Like, I'm continuing to be proud of you. Like, you have just been so good this year, Spencer. And now you're starting to hit the outrights after like continuing to just crush the matchups and in tournament things. It's been really fun to watch you just do your thing and absolutely just like tear the season apart so far, Spence. So congrats to you on a good season so far. Let's keep it rolling here at the RotoBaller PGA show going into the Valero Texas Open. We spoke about Steven Jaeger for 7 minutes in last week's show. And all I got to him, Spencer, was tons and tons of DFS output there, but a top 40 at minus 150. That was a little disappointed in that. I only went with Sahith and Willie Z. I had space for another 25 to 1 on my card, and I was just so scared of Scotty. I didn't pull the trigger on anybody. I should have just, I hate regretting and feeling like I didn't pull the trigger on something I should have. That to me, we spoke about it, and I was in with Jaeger with you, and just somehow you never convinced me, Spencer. So I'm going to need you to be a bit more better at convincing, because I've only had one bet so far this week. It's been a bit of a weird day for me. So you're going to kind of lead me down the path of the Valero this week and kind of do the same for the people that are watching. So we got Fo in the house saying, "What's up, gentlemen?" Off Twitter, yeah. Get your ass into the YouTube section, yeah, and hit the like button for us, Fo, if you don't mind. And the rest of you doing that too. So Spence, we go into the Valero. This is where you've hit Corey Connors at 250 to 1 as one of your first big hits of your PGA Tour career. Corey Connors is Monday Q'd. And you somehow found the magic in the model there for Corey Connors, and then he went again and took care of business last year. Was it last year? He'll be defending again this week, right? So whether or not he does that, we'll have to see. Scotty Scheffler's already taken one of the defending champ title scalps away from him this year, so maybe Connors can continue that trend. Spence, let's chat about the Valero. What's going on with the course? Give me some high level, just some top end metrics that you're kind of looking to key in on, some approach ranges, some basic but essential stats that you're going to be focusing on this week.
I think you can tune into any golf show and hear that very basic output of you're going to have to be good around the greens. You have that 3.3% increase. And that's the very basic way to look at this. But I took a more in-depth approach. I noticed that there's 6 holes that are going to be 410 yards or greater on these par 4s. That are very challenging. You see it be almost across the board, the most challenging holes that you have at the course. You get to the par 5 locations, you get a very similar answer where, yes, you're going to have to make birdies there if you actually want to win, but these are not gimme birdie attempts. Like, they're long holes. They're opportunities to where you can really create a distinct advantage if you're able to get birdies at those locations. So when I built my model this week, one of the things that I ran, and you can find this over at the PGA Tour, this is just stats that I kept pulling, and there were a lot of different forms of it for aggression, but I wanted to see how players played in par 5 birdie or better aggression, how players played in overall aggression, players that went for the green more frequently than others, because yes, distance is going to matter. It's a long golf course. And I think that anytime that you have distance in a venue like this, yes, you're going to see the overall driving accuracy massively decrease, but you also don't get this corollary that comes into play there where missing a fairway all of a sudden results in trouble. Like, you can miss fairways here. You can bomb and gouge a little bit. And it just comes down to how aggressive can you be on your second shot from there. And really on those par 5 locations, how are you able? Ruthless aggression is essentially what you're trying to find. And I ran it 4 different ways of aggression. And, I think when you look at Corey Connors of how he's won this golf tournament, number 1 in my model, both times that he won it in overall aggression. When you look at Jordan Spieth, when he won, he entered the tournament number 1 in my model in par 5 birdie or better aggression. Doesn't mean that the pieces are going to always work. And Spieth is one of those hit and miss commodities that we see. But when I built a model this week, and this can kind of start taking us into the board, there was one player for me that ranked inside of the top 15 in overall aggression, par 5 aggression, aggression rate. Would you like to guess who that is?
Overall aggression, par 5 aggression, and
aggression rate.
I want to say it is Benny On.
Okay, so overall aggression, Ben On was second overall for me. He missed, and I'll tell you what he ended up missing for. I think he had 2 of the 3 there, and he was the closest of the mix. It ended up being somebody that I know you have a history with, Byron, and
Oh no.
I don't think you necessarily view this guy as being an aggressive golfer. He has added distance here in 2024, but Matthew Fitzpatrick was the only player that ranked inside the top 15. Also the number 1 projected aggressive golfer, which ended up making him the number 1 par 5 projected scorer in this field. He also was only one of 5 players who landed inside of the top 20 and expected par 3, 4, and 5 scoring. So I never, ever, ever play Matthew Fitzpatrick. Like, he is pretty much always out of the list for me just because of the projected proximity numbers that I dive into. But I think the windier conditions help his scrambling acumen. That hopefully keeps the score a little bit lower into that like 12 under par sort of range. But I kind of think that aggression is the key answer. And I know you have been on this week. I think a lot of stuff makes sense with Ben On. I wish he would have been 40, 45, 50 to 1. That was my only gripe with him, was the number, but this is also an ideal course fit for him.
We're starting to see what he's okay. Let's just we'll start with the 9s and kind of just go work around our way here. And I'll go with Benny On first, Spencer. Like, he's the only outright I have. I got him at 35. I'd probably bet him at 30. I know you're wishing 40, 45. I think those times are done with Benny On. He's got 3 top 10s this year. Like, he's playing good golf. He's been mispriced every single time. He was in the 50s. We were getting really comfortable with them early on Monday mornings. Now, it's kind of they've figured it out a little bit, and he suits any course, dude. He's exceptionally explosive. I'm glad he pops up on that aggression rate thing that you do, and it makes tons of sense. He's a really good wedge player for someone that has as much length as he does. His putting has got remarkably better. Like, dude, it's so crazy. You just changed the putter. Like just a putter change. It can be a head of the putter, a blade to a mallet, or just completely go from putting normally to the broomstick and, just overhaul your entire golf game. So it's kind of crazy to see that from Benny On, and it's changed his game. Like Steven Yeager's driving distance. It's basically that same catalyst that just gives you confidence to do the rest of your golf game with the expertise that you've always have, but always felt like you had to push those boundaries because there's an area of your game that's letting you down, and you have to overcommit in areas that you're good at. Now it gives you that confidence to kind of, rely on all areas of your game. So a long way to say Benny On has turned himself into a holistic, fully well-rounded, beautiful golfer. And he's arguably one of my favorite plays at $9,000 on the slate. I'll be betting him top 10 again at plus 360. He's just top 10ing and top 5ing like crazy. Let's go. I feel like he's due for a win. I don't want to miss out on it. What's your thoughts on Benny On?
Yeah, I think for me, there's a lot of similarities to this answer of what we kind of talked about with Yeager last week, where, if they put Ben On at 50 to 1, and I know we keep using that as kind of like the number that we want to talk about just because he was there for so long, that's probably the first wager that I place on the board for me this week. And there's some potential that they may have priced me out of it. And unfortunately, I didn't end up hitting the outright, but I agree with everything that you said, Byron. This is a perfect spot for him. He's second in my model in projected par 4 scoring on these longer holes. That's going to give you some of the safety there. He's inside the top 10 for overall projected scoring. That takes a very big increase in my model in par 5 birdie or better percentage. I think everything that you want to see from Ben On is trending in the right direction, and the pieces are really starting to match up for him. And when we talk about, golfers that kind of just have that blueprint of what you're trying to find for success, I think Ben On is one of those key names. Like, he doesn't necessarily do it with the putter, but he has all those increases on similar green complexes around the green. And even in general, he's a top 10, 15 probably player in this field around the green to begin with, but he actually saw an increase on similar surfaces. So
yes. Just love to hear that.
Just a very high-end return for a golfer that I agree. We chase wins from players quite frequently, and books more often than not do a good job, for us a bad job, I guess, of pricing us out of some of these spots. And I think one of the problems is here, there's so much hold percentage on this board where they took a name like Ben On, and there's a couple others that we could talk about too, and they, in my opinion, removed a lot of what I thought the value was on the board but I think Ben-On's close. Like he is, I decided to go in a, I guess what you would call like a more gross route of some of the names that I ended up betting in that same similar range. Like I'm talking about Ben-On hasn't won a golf tournament. I bet Tommy Fleetwood. I bet Alex Noren. I mean, these are not necessarily your prototypical golfers that are going to win, but if there was one name that missed for me, I agree with you, Byron. It was Ben-On. That would be the last name that missed my card.
And just to add to that, Spence, he's got a 6th and a 7th finish here since 2019 in those 3 starts. So, I mean, I don't know exactly what the course history reflects at this venue. Going into the Augusta next week, where it will be very popular. By the way, do you want to do a quick little Masters futures at the end of the show? Kind of wrap it up with that.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, I don't have anything as far as a futures bet. I mean, I'll bring up the odds board, see where we're at. Like, I do think in general, like the interesting discussion that occurs anytime that you get these majors, and we'll save it for the end, but usually the live golfers see a boost in price. It's just like the lack of projection and the lack of people wanting to pick them in these golf tournaments. So I think you can get some drifts on guys like Dustin Johnson and some players like that. But the Masters is the most historic venue that we go to and the most recognizable venue. It's going to be a very fun tournament. And I always write, as you know, Byron, an article that I call the 7 deadly sins. And it's the 7 things that you either have to do or you cannot do to win. I've written that 5 years at RotoBaller. It usually narrows it down to about 7 or 8 people. Every single year it has landed on the winner, including when Tiger won. So I'm curious to see what the output ends up being when I run that in a couple days.
I'm excited. We can bring I actually looked it up the other day because I wanted to make sure that 1 or 2 guys I bet a live golfer who won a major last year at 20-1. Fun fact. If you can figure out the math there for the Masters, he's the guy. So we'll get to him at the end of the show. So Spence, chat to us about Fitz. What about him fits this golf course, and why is this going to be the way he kind of takes care of business for you?
It kind of goes back to the answer that I gave where I just think the winning score isn't going to creep as far into that 18 under par sort of range that we can sometimes get here. It's a challenging venue. There is an ability to produce scores. We have seen players get this closer to 20 under par and capture the title. We've also seen Kevin Na score a 16 on a hole. Like there's trouble looming at all turns, but I think that trouble and the overall ability for Matthew Fitzpatrick to succeed on some of these more challenging venues has been very pronounced over the course of his career. And it kind of comes down to what I talked about, like the weighted proximity saw an increase in my model, not necessarily in the range where I would want it to be, but enough of an increase where he ended up being a top 10 projected strokes gained total output player in my model. And that's not necessarily something that I would expect to see from him when you're talking about outside the top 70 in strokes gained approach with the weighted proximity that I ran. But all the total driving numbers look good for the course. The short game is exactly what you want to see. And as I talked about, there were 5 golfers that landed inside of the top, I think it was 20 for me in the par 3, 4, and 5 scoring in every one of those categories. He just so happened to be one of those names. So, I mean, it puts you with a very standard list from there. Like it's him, it's Rory, it's Oberg, it's Morikawa. And then there's somebody really far down the board. Byron, do you want to guess who that is? It's going to be, I'll put you in the general range so you're not just like randomly throwing darts. It's
for what stat again, Spencer? Approach play?
This is par 3, expected par 3 scoring, expected par 4 scoring, and expected par 5 scoring in my model.
So just across a board, just like
so you need to be top 20 in par 3 scoring. You need to be top 20 in par 4 scoring. It's all individual outlooks there.
Okay, is he like $7,000?
He's less. That's my clue. He's less than that.
Okay, less than 7K.
Yeah.
Okay. How does a guy by the name of I think you're probably looking at Webb Simpson a little bit. No.
I mean, if I'm running a model from like 2000 yeah,
20. I'm kind of wanting to say Mark Hubbard.
Hubbard graded very well
but
for
he's
me.
7K. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not Hubbard, but Hubbard was a top 20 projected scorer when I took all of it. Hubbard didn't make it because of his weighted par 5 scoring.
Yeah, that's what I said that's why I went higher register, because of the par 5s. He's a short hitter. Okay, Taylor Montgomery.
I'm going to give you the name. It's not Montgomery. It is Nate Lashley.
Nate Lashley. Dude, he's been fun. Have you been watching what he's been up to, man?
I had him last week, unfortunately, at plus 550 for a top 20, and he came in 21st place. So just missed out on that ticket. He was kind of hovering in that range the entire day and just couldn't put the pieces together on the back nine. Missed all the birdie opportunities that he had down the stretch, but he's a boomer bust golfer. Like, to me, he's one of those names. And I worry about DFS if the ownership gets too high from what we've seen, because I think when you look at the profile, you see this golfer that randomly pops for top 10s and then he misses. I mean, I'm going to say half of his cuts, but like he's even been missing more than half of them recently. But the ball striking numbers, loved him last week. It continues to love him this week. You know, if the ownership gets too high, I think that he's the type of name that turns into bad chalk just because how volatile he is. But if that ends up being the case, I'll bet him top 10. I'll bet him top 20. I'll try to find different ways to get exposure. And I do have an outright ticket on him this week in the 200 plus range. So I thought he was an intriguing name to go back to. Like, everybody wants to go back, and my model likes Grazerman and it likes all those names again. But Lashley was the one that didn't see the price increase where, you know, Grazerman got cut in half or even more so than that, where Lashley just a couple bad holes at the finish and they weren't even bad. He just parred them. All of a sudden, a 21st isn't enough on that resume to really boost him up the board. So I thought 200 to 1 was a great number if you're just throwing long shots down the board.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm seeing 130 now on DraftKings, and
it makes sense why the numbers moved.
Yeah, his top 10 is a 10 to 1, and his top 20 is 41 plus 400. So almost in the same space as last week. I think it's a bit of a redemption week for him, Spence. And we always try and bring this up. I've really enjoyed learning about this year since I've pulled in those like betting markets, you know, top 5, top 10, top 20. And I think Nate Lashley is exactly that guy. You bet him top 20, top 10, even though he's $6,200, everyone would be like, okay, I'll bet him top 40 at plus 140. He's top 20ing or top 21ing every time he's top 40ing, right? You know, so you missed out by one place, unfortunately, last week. But the philosophy there is exactly how you should be approaching some of these golfers. Is even just, you don't even have to have like a stat in your model or anything. You can go and take a look at someone's profile and just see. You know, Data Golf does a good job with color coding, like dark green, or you're going to see just tons of white. You know, like, does he just keep making cuts and finishing 37th? Kind of thing. So
there's a lot of golfers that have that exact profile, and
yes,
I think people bet them too far up the board. And like specifically on my model, with the way that I build it, I have an overall rank, I have an upside, and I have a safety number. And any single time that these upside totals take a massive spike, but then you see that large decrease that comes into play for safety, I don't really care what golfer we're talking about. Yeah, it's a $6,200 golfer, but it's, to your point, he's better suited when you play him for pure upside in these markets. And a lot of that reason, and it doesn't mean that he's not going to come in 37th place and, you know, land it solo and get a pure top 40 out of it. But it also comes down to expected hit rate. Value matters in these spots. And I don't want to lay too much exposure on a top 40 bet on a golfer that when he produces as a top 10 or 20 player. And when he doesn't, he misses the cut. So, you know, the exposure I'd have to get down to bet him top 40 for the volatility that he has is not something that my model wants to do. And it's kind of one of the reasons why he was one of the most significant disparities that I had between upside and safety. And, you know, that means that when he implodes, he misses the cut badly and the bet's going to end up losing. But like, that's what I'm willing to take when you're talking about 10 to 1 numbers for a top 10. Like, there's value in that price.
Yes, dude. You have to lay literally $10 to make 100. You know, like that is, I know I'm just stating simple math, but just that's the thing, right? Versus last week, I bet Scotty Scheffler for a top 10 at minus 230. It's the biggest bet I've laid in golf, and I won it. You know, like Scotty is just churning out top 10s. Like, I should have bet the top 5 as well, but the odds weren't fair enough to do so. You know, like I'd rather do that when he's like plus money for a top 5 or plus money for a top 10 or roughly there. But they moved the odds to him and there was still value at minus 230, Spencer. Unbelievable stuff there. And Scotty just putting a run together. So we'll have to see what he gets up to at the Masters.
Byron, very quickly, I've talked about this before on the show, and golf's a lot different. Golf is a volatile sport from day to day, so the comparison doesn't make quite as good of sense as what I'm trying to have it be explained as. But I've mentioned this before, like, just because you're laying a lot of juice on a bet doesn't mean that the value is not there. I've mentioned this a million times. The biggest bet I've ever made in my entire life for any sport was Floyd Mayweather over Conor McGregor. I don't remember the exact price. I waited for it to drop a little bit. I think I got it in the high minus 200s from the total that it went down to. But like, value is value at the end of the day. All we're trying to do is find long-term value that we can turn into a positive ROI and increase the bankroll over and over again. And it takes more of an edge for me to want to lay juice in those spots. And I need a bigger percentage of an edge to actually go that route with it. But you do find opportunities where there are mistakes in the market where players are either underpriced or overpriced in various aspects, whether it's head-to-head matchups or placement bets like you're talking about. So you have to be careful, because if you over-evaluate how big your edge is, that's where you can get burned in a lot of these spots. Yeah. But as I keep saying, value is value. And I think that's the one thing that people need to realize here.
Right. And Spencer, he's been doing it for the last 18 to 24 months, where he's the most profitable golfer in the top 10 and top 20 market, and his odds are negative. Yeah. That's the thing, is because your average Joe isn't going to want to lay $23 down to win 10, $230 to win 100. That's the tricky part about betting these sports. So it's really interesting to see, but we've been chatting about a whole bunch of jabronis and no-namers, and we're 26 minutes in. At this time in the show last week, Spence, we started speaking about Steven Yeager, 27 minutes into the show. If you want to hear the beautiful, beautiful, wonderful stuff that Spence had to say about Steven Yeager, go check out last week's at 27 minutes. But stay tuned for now. Let's chat about Rory McIlroy, $12,300, 27 minutes into the show. Obviously, we're not that thrilled about Rory McIlroy because it took us half an hour to bring up his name. His best finish this year, Spence, is T19. Scotty Scheffler has like as many top 20s as Rory doesn't, this year. I keep saying this week. I've got the year and the weeks all messed up, but you get what I'm saying. Rory hasn't been playing well, Spence. How are you adapting, approaching, dealing with Rory McIlroy this week?
This might be a hot take based off of the outright card that I've talked about and the answer that you just discussed right now. And maybe this is more of a DFS answer for all the reasons that you stated, and let's see where the ownership lands. But does this not feel like the prototypical spot leading into the Masters where Rory wins? And yeah, exactly. And my model has him number one, and that's also taking a lot of the projected, or I shouldn't say projected, the actual performances that he's put together. And even with that, I think we've seen a trend recently, like he's quietly averaged nearly 4 strokes on average off the tee during his past 8 starts. He's been hit and miss with the approach game, and I think that's where the struggles really have come into play. But when he has spiked in a really big way. Like 4 of the last 13, he's gained over 4 strokes when he did gain with the irons. I don't know, Byron. I think he's going to win this golf tournament and kind of punish all cards here. I didn't think that the 9-1 give or take opening there was even that far off. Nobody's going to want to bet him because of what we've seen this year. I'm hoping nobody's going to want to play him for DFS. He is my favorite play, $10,000 and up. I think that he's very easy to build around this week. Curious to see where the ownership lands, but I am much more bullish on him than maybe you are, but definitely than the rest of the market.
I'm let me gather my thoughts here because I've got so much to say about Rory. The fact that he's so talented. I don't think we need the fact that he's playing badly right now doesn't mean that tomorrow he's going to be playing badly. That's how talented he is, right? Like some golfers like Steven Yeager, etc., we need to see come along and go, Rory could be playing some of the worst golf of his career and win a random golf tournament. That's just who he is. He's Rory McIlroy. We go into a tournament the week before a major. I feel like he's going to be so busy thinking about next week that he might just land up by accidentally winning this week. Yeah. Like we said at the Scottish, Spence. And to me, I've said, Rory, I need to go and look at this, but Rory's like strokes gained by 2020, like January 1st through the Masters and then the Masters to the end of the year. I would love to see, since he snap hooked it into that guy's cottage like living room, what his strokes gained have been since then. Like, because each year the Masters nags and nags and nags on him. And this is the poor Valero, Spencer, catching such strays this week, or just not even strays, just not catching anything. Like I saw some guy like sharing the Masters pricing is out already. Like Valero hasn't even, since Monday of the Valero, we got like the Masters pricing. So we have to give the Valero some love, but we'll want to chat about the Masters. Anyway, so Rory, in my opinion, Spencer, it's mental. Like it's expectations for him. I don't think there's anything got to do with form or like technique. It's all upstairs. A game of 6 inches right between your ears, and that's Rory McIlroy's biggest issue. And I think having it just be a tune-up is exactly like what you were saying. Like he could tune up and win, and then feel like he's in form, and then miss the cut again at the Masters next week. So I totally agree. I haven't bet anyone outside of Benny on, so I can probably dip into a 9-1. Or if that drifts to 10, I'll maybe pull the trigger there. So maybe my lackluster start to the week is going to benefit you. But outside of Rory, Spencer, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I know a site like Data Golf has like his projected, I think I saw it this morning at 18-1 or 20-1 or whatever the number was. Like, I think that's massively too high. Like, I truly believe that 9-1 total is very close to being what's proper for him. Like, everybody weighs numbers differently. And maybe this is the answer of me looking at things from such a long-term perspective that Rory doesn't necessarily see that decrease that some other places would have. But like I said, the off the tee game, great. Like the off the tee numbers are phenomenal. It's just the approach metrics. Like if he can be good, why can he not win this weekend? It's a tune-up essentially. And even if he doesn't win, I know what's going to happen here, because this is the way that's going to burn me the most. Every single year I bet Rory at Augusta. Every single year I pick him as my one and done. He will do something enough, and it'll be his stupid backdoor. He'll backdoor a second out of this when he shoots
31 on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, he's going to shoot some ridiculous number on Sunday to get himself in the second place. I'm going to say, you've sold me, I'm in, after not being in contention the entire week.
I don't know, Spencer. I feel like this is the week. Next week, I think I'm out again. I can just feel the expectation just being too heavy for him. I don't know if he's ever going to do it, man. I don't know if he's ever going to do it. So we'll have to wait and see. Speaking of trying to win green jackets and having actually done it, Hideki Matsuyama, the second most expensive golfer in the field, starting to find himself in playing some decent golf. 6th at the Players. He's only top 10 outside of his win at the Genesis since his 6th at the Players last year. So been playing some decent golf, weird golf as well, Spence. Like to not have top 10 for over a year, basically, but still playing some solid golf and then finding yourself as the second most expensive golfer on a slate. That's an interesting set of circumstances, isn't it?
Second most expensive golfer, and he's going to be very popular for all the reasons that you talked about because of the form that we've seen. I've used this argument before, and I'm going to give 2 answers here, and I don't know where I'm landing yet. I think the price is fair. I do believe he should be the second most expensive player in this field. My concern with Hideki historically has been, see, you let me start talking about Rory, and I just want to talk about Rory now for the rest of the time. But if you look at Hideki historically, I like him when he's $8,000. I like when some of that upside can come into the mix there. So, like I said, I think the price is fair. I don't have any gripes. I would put him in a favorite, and this is kind of the big thing for me, in a head-to-head matchup against every single player in this tournament that's not named Rory McIlroy. He's even a favorite in a head-to-head matchup for me over Matthew Fitzpatrick, who my model loves this week. Yeah. So there's answers that are going to have to be decided there. Like I think Hideki's going to be very popular. I think Oberg's going to be very popular. I wouldn't play both of them. I'd probably try to, I'm going to play Rory, and I'm going to try to figure out either how aggressive do I want to get into the 9s? Do I want this to be a situation where I have tons of Fitzpatrick, tons of Fleetwood, Ben on, Noren down in the 8,000s? Am I trying to fit in a guy like Hideki? I'm probably leaning right now into, I think he's a fine play, but I don't know if the upside's necessarily what I want it to be for the ownership. I guess we'll let that number come in, but I'll have you power rank them after me. I would probably power rank the $10,000 golfers, ownership aside: Rory, Hideki, Oberg, Morikawa, but I think Morikawa and Oberg are very close. Like, I think when you add ownership to the mix, I'd rather take the ownership discount on Morikawa over Oberg.
I would rank them exactly the same way, Spencer. I think Colin seems a bit broken right now. The guy just seems like he's doing that thing. But again, we saw Thomas Dietrich almost win the freaking Houston Open after six-jacking like 3 weeks ago. Like, golf is a weird sport, dude. You can out of nowhere like wake up one day and just completely forget out of golf, and then wake up one day and be Steven Yeager and just fend off Scotty Scheffler on a Sunday.
Betting is tough for that reason too, because I believe we talked about this on the show, and I mentioned Dietrich being one of my favorite plays as a value option down beneath, and we got there at the end, and your words just kept ringing in my head over and over again that Thomas Dietrich's going to find a way to blow this. Thomas Dietrich's not going to make a putt. Because I was sitting there and I'm like, Dietrich's going to win this golf tournament after I've bet him a million times years ago. And my model loved him this week, but I couldn't get there because I just didn't have the value on the price of what he actually was based off of what I thought was proper. And, thankfully Yeager ended up winning, so we didn't have to go down that route. But I think these high-end guys have the ability to just turn it on at any point, which is what makes Colin at the right ownership percentage intriguing. Like, he's the same answer that I'm talking. Like, I wouldn't say it's as massive. It's a little bit different because Morikawa is one of the favorites and Nate Lashley is one of the cheapest options, but it's that same trajectory difference that I have where when Morikawa hits, he's hitting for a top 10 at a higher frequency than the market is projecting him for, but he's also missing the cut more than and Morikawa specifically, he's missing the cut more than anybody in this range inside of my model. So I think you just have to know what you're getting with him. And if you do back Morikawa, you're doing it from an ownership game theory perspective more than anything else.
Dude, and to back your thing there, like his top 40 numbers on DraftKings are the shortest of everyone inside the 9K and up range outside of Benny On. But that exactly goes to the point, is like he's also just incredibly talented and can just win this tournament at any given moment. But he's not playing consistently good golf, which is we've come to like learn from Colin, right? That used to be his thing, is just this consistency. And I was taking a peek at his long iron, Spencer. They're not the same as what they used to be. He used to be an elite long iron player. He's now just a good one, and it's dropped off quite significantly lately. And I don't know what's the deal with that. You'd expect guys with speed training and things like that potentially getting better in those ranges, but maybe he's just lost the feel of those long irons where he used to be so good with them. And I think that's the difference in his game right now with that lack of consistency in the long range.
It's a very similar answer to Justin Thomas and some of the lack of consistency that he's put together. Like Morikawa's 47th in my model this week in projected proximity from 200 plus yards. That's not the Morikawa that I was going to say that we 47th.
47th, Spencer. Colin Morikawa from 200 and out proximity in the Valero Texas Open, dude. Yeah, it's not the US Open, it's the Valero, that's the Texas Open. Like the things are going wrong for him, man. And your model is long term.
Yeah, I know. That makes it even worse that like this has been picking up on something for an extended duration of time at this point.
It's a problem. It's a legit issue for him because he needs to be with his lack of length. He needs to be accurate as balls from that range, and he's not. So issues for him. I'm out on him this week. I know you might be playing the ownership side of things with him there.
I probably won't, just to like give an answer there. Like to me, the way that I really want to build this is probably Rory and stack the 9,000s. If you give me, look. At the right ownership percentage, I'll consider anybody who has upside. I don't know if we necessarily get there with Colin because I do think people talk themselves into him, and he's a very liked golfer. If he's 7, 8, 9, 10%, I'm going to be out. All of a sudden, if he can start creeping into that sub 5% total, we can have a different discussion about the upside that he brings there.
Yeah. Exactly. It's all ownership dependent. I like how you rounded that out there. Let's dive into the nines. We've been chit-chatting, but having a good time doing it. As always, over here on Back. I'm not on Back Nine. We're on the RotoBaller PGA show. It's blue everywhere. I got to remind myself. That's why I changed the colors. The 9K range, Spencer. It's got one of the most savage guys when in contention, but hasn't quite found himself in the mix. I am loving Max Homa this week. So much so that there's going to be probably half my lineups that I start in the 9K range, I would say, because what I'm kind of also expecting the week before the Masters is all of those big 10K names tuning up. Max has sucked so bad in the Masters, like, and in general in majors, like, I'm expecting him to kind of just really focus on this week. Hopefully he's been playing well, Spencer, outside of, a really bad players. He kind of made the cut and then sucked it up, but still making the cut at the players again. He's been making the cut there quite often. The putter seemed to show the heck up leading into the players. I don't know what that'll happen at the players, but leading into the players, he was starting to putt very well. And hopefully when Max Homa's putter starts putting well, he plays a bit like his irons, like, come into form. They draft, they kind of slipstream into form when the putter starts moving in the right direction. The confidence comes back into his game. So we've seen that. And to me, at 22-1, I don't know, there's 25s out there. Hopefully I might dive in on a Max Homa, Spencer. What are you thinking at 25-1? Definitely love Max from a safety and overall perspective in DFS at $9,900.
I like him from an upside perspective. We can throw that into the mix, which I guess encompasses some of that overall take there. This $9,000 section to me, I don't think there's a single player, and I can't play everybody. This is not the argument that I'm making here, but you could make an argument for every single golfer in this range, and I think you could come up with a pretty sound reason for why they're playable for one reason or another. And that's kind of, for me, is the 9,000s were so strong that I think there's a lot of potential to be found there. For me, with Homa, 15th in my model in weighted proximity, 66th overall for his baseline on any single course. So one of the big climbers in projected proximity. I think you have to love that for Max Homa. As I keep talking about with the upside versus safety portions of my model, he was one of the significant movers when I was looking for upside there. So I think anytime, and I think you and I, Byron, maybe more so than a lot of people in the space, probably higher on him than the majority of everybody. Like, we had conversations for season-long fantasy where, like, at the top of a draft, like, yeah, Scotty's going to go number one. I thought at the time Rory should have probably gone two, but I thought there was like a legitimate argument to be made between Rory, Oberg, Homa. Like, it was a very close range of that mix.
Yeah.
Homa is just, he's a golfer that has not gotten the most out of major championships at this point of his career, but thankfully we're not playing a major championship this week. And I don't think he's going to be massively owned from the early returns of what I'm seeing right now. So I think from a leverage standpoint, he makes a ton of sense for DFS. And I kind of think there's a lot of names in this range. Like, if we're directly comparing, I would rather play Homa to Morikawa at what I assume is going to be similar ownership. And, you get $200 cheaper on Homa there. And I think Fitzpatrick is going to be very similar to where he's very playable at this. We'll see where the ownership ends up landing. But outside of, let's see where Ben On goes, I guess, popularity wise. But like, outside of Connors, I don't think any of these guys are going to be like massively popular. Do you?
I was just getting stuck in Max Homa's top 20 finishes, Spencer, sorry, over the last little while. But that's the thing about this 9K range, is it's filled with incredibly good golfers and volatile golfers at that. Spieth, Fleetwood, like Benny On, Fitz. These are all GPP candidates in my opinion, right? So you can just slap 2 or 3 of these guys in the same lineup and you have got yourself a fireworks show 3 or 4 months ahead of the 4th of July today. Like, it's looking good over here in the nines.
When you're in the $9,000 range, when you're looking for better upside than safety numbers and better upside numbers in their overall rank, Homa had better numbers. Fitzpatrick had better numbers. Spieth had better numbers. Fleetwood had better numbers. So it's pretty much every single guy that you just talked about. Yeah. All of a sudden, with like the Corey Connorses of the world, and I guess Ben On, which was one of the reasons why I didn't bet him at 30-1. That would be like the only downside that I had to the equation there. They had better safety numbers than they had upside numbers, but I think that's kind of getting a little nitpicky in the profile, just because we're still talking about top 10 projected players in my sheet. Pretty much all iterations of how I ran it. It's just when I'm building an outright card and I only have room for, 2 or 3 of these guys with the way that I build sub 40-1 here, somebody had to get cut. So that's why I keep going back to why Ben On got cut. But there's a lot of potential value in this range. Like, I really like the 9,000s this week. I think it's one of the better sections that we've had in a long time.
You cannot pass up on Jordan Spieth, no matter how badly he's playing in Texas. You know, he's like Ryan Palmer, but the better version, the much, much better version. The current Spieth we're getting right now, Spencer, though, is like, you know, that coffee gif of that guy, like, you know, like it's just gets like glitchy as heck. I think that's what's starting to happen to Jordan Spieth on these courses. Like he's just 3.5 like hours into a round is like, I'm done. What am I doing on this golf course right now? I'm just going to feel like just rip a snap hook into the trees and make this a bit more enjoyable for myself. So in Texas, I think Spieth's absolutely live all the time. He's got one of the more impressive top 10, top 5 upside rates in this field compared to the likes of Corey Connors, by the way, hasn't had a top 10 this year, which makes this really, really interesting. You know, of all the golfers that I'm seeing on my screen, the next person to not have a top 10 is Tom Kim, you know, at $8,100. So everyone's been having some sort of, and Rory McIlroy hasn't had a top. We discussed that already, but interesting stuff. Corey going to a tournament that he's had top 14, first, 26th, 35th, you know, so that's just the interest, you know. I'm out on Corey, though, just because he's going to be chalk as balls.
I think the general public, and it's a conversation that we've had quite a bit on this show, even in the 2 months that we've done it, or 3 months, whatever we're up to at this point. The general public loves these safe golfers that at least have a safe profile. They over-own them in every single one of these spots. And the public ends up on these 20, 25, 30% names that, they have increased made cut potential compared to their counterparts. But when you compare it to the upside totals, he doesn't have the same upside total in my model as Homa. He doesn't have the same upside total in my model as Spieth. And Spieth is really the good one because they're right next to each other in pricing, where you can make a decision for $100 more to move up to Spieth. And I understand Connors, if we're talking head-to-head matchups here.
Yes, that's exactly it, Spencer. That's the play.
Yes. If you're talking cash games, Corey Connors is better cash game play, but we're talking winning
top 20.
We're talking about winning GPP contests. We want maximum upside for minimal ownership. There's something to be said about taking a 30% owned guy who, yes, he has a higher floor, but the upside isn't there, versus taking an upside player that's going to be 5-6% owned, but when he hits for a top 10. That's how you win GPP contests. And I think when you look in, if you actually go and you start allocating where the funds are going in DFS, you start realizing that these min caches, DraftKings makes so much money on the rake that they're taking. You have to, when you hit and you put yourself in contention, you need to win. Like, having a high cash rate is not a good answer. If you're having a high cash rate, play those lineups in cash game lineups.
Yes.
Because you're playing cash game builds. You're not playing to win GPPs. And, you know, DFS golf is all about, you lose a lot of weeks of the year to have one big hit. And, you know, for me, that's kind of like Houston last week. I put the pieces together almost ideally correct from what I'm trying to do. It ends up being my biggest week of the year, and everything gets paid for in that sense. So, like, you just have to hit when you hit and not worry about, okay, well, this week I ended up coming in last because I went the volatile route. Like, you need to play for first and not worry about these min caches.
Yes, you absolutely have to, man. And you have to make sure that when you do, even if you don't hit first, like our guy Kevo in the Discord this week in Showdown, second and third, and won himself 17K. You know, like, it's almost what the main prize would, I think what the main probably was 50 or whatever, but it was the $20. It's still where you need to make sure that you got those core so that your seventh guy that's coming in is still going to provide you enough juice to get you third as well. You know, like, that's how it needs to be. And I think it's incredibly important to make sure your player pool's tight, because if your player pool's too loose, you're not going to have your core get you a second and third and fourth, or second, third, seventh, sixth, you know, kind of stack, even if you miss out on that first place win, right? So keeping a tight player pool, critical.
It's a $20 contest that he had multiple lineups into. He wins $17,000. This is the exact answer that we're talking about. Like, this is how you win DFS. You put the pieces together and you have those high-end finishes, and that's where, you know, he ends up building a bankroll now that is massively above where it was as a $20 sort of contest player there. So, like,
It's delightful, man. And it was so fun to see. And he used my showdown model, which is really cool because sometimes I give out shitty picks. It happens. But he used the model to make his own. Like that's what we're getting at RotoBaller. Code Maniac, code T off, get yourself 10% off. All you could wish for. We're giving you everything. Spencer rocking with the head-to-head matchups, me with the showdown. We're cooking over at RotoBaller. The RotoBaller PGA show, folks. Me and Spencer have got 4 wins on the show. Me and Spencer have got 4 wins on this show. So not to mention Spencer's 3, but we are rocking and rolling over here. So kind of taking our while to get through the slate, but me and Spencer having a fun time as always. I see a man by the name of James asking us a question about Chandler Phillips and Sam Stevens. Let's dive into that range, Spencer. I think that's an important range to kind of get into, depending on how you kind of go about building your rosters this week. Finding those cheapos or like value plays are the way to get to the top of the board there. So give me your takes on those 2 guys.
I'm fine with both of them. They're both top 50 inside of my model this week. I think that they're very much in that range of a Martin Laird, who my model liked. I talked about Nate Lashley. I worry about the ownership a little bit. Let's see where that ownership lands before going too deep into that. I think on the bottom end of there, those are probably 2 of the better value plays that we can discuss. Like my numbers like CT Pan, my numbers like Joseph Bramlett, very similar options to Chandler Phillips, I guess, of what we're talking there. But I think both of those 2 plays are completely fine.
Yeah, I think they're great too. I think they're both playing like really good golf for $6,000, $5,800 golfers. I think that's what you really have to bear in mind. And I feel like while we're in this range, I would add Ryan Palmer to the mix there. I think Ryan Palmer is one of these guys. Like if you take, despite his poor track record at this golf course, he's playing okay golf right now and made the cut at the Houston. So I'll be playing him too in Texas. It's just some guys, Spencer. They just play well in these like certain states.
Yeah,
there's definitely something to it, man. It's really, and Sam Stevens, in my opinion, also like I love where he's going with what he's doing, man. It's been lots of fun. I think he played pretty nicely too, second last year.
Stevens, I don't see, and granted, we're very early in the week. I'd like to see where the ownership lands before we end up with some very chalky $6,000 or $5,800 golfer. But if you're just looking from a pure price perspective here, he was one of the top 10 most underpriced players that I had in my sheet.
Nice. Good. James asking all the right questions here because I agree. I think you're on the right track there, James. I would stick with those 2 guys. They seem like solid options in this realm. Another name, while we're in the 5Ks, Spencer, Joe Highsmith. He's got some stuff about him. I don't know what it is. He just seems to figure it out. T21 last week. I mean, the guy was right. I think that would have been probably a T10 had he not played as well to get himself right into the mix. Like he kind of found himself a little under pressure, I think, going into Saturday. So it's kind of funny what it takes to win a golf tournament. You really got to catch the momentum at the right time and kind of not get out front too soon. Otherwise, the rest of the field can draft off of you. But interesting stuff. Any other 5K names we're going to chat about, Spencer?
I do think, like last week, I gave the argument that the very low 6,000s and even some of those $5,000 options, like a Jacob Bridgman, and I talked about Grazerman. He was in the 6s last week, but I thought there was more playability down in that range than we get. Like I do think for the most part that these $5,000 golfers see a general decrease that I mostly want to avoid. Stevens would probably, if you made me pick one, would be my preferred $5,000 option.
Kevin Streelman?
I know the course history looks great. There's good safety numbers, maybe at the right ownership percentage. I didn't necessarily love him. You could maybe convince me more on like a Harry Hall. I've been talking about Hall quite a bit lately. And 2 consecutive made cuts, the Houston Open. Like I talked about the Texas win play that he can bring together just from being a UNLV grad there.
And the Charles Schwab. He was right in the mix too, right? Charles Schwab's in Texas. So love Harry Hall, dude. And he's playing nice. Playing okay.
Yeah, I think those would probably be like Hall and Stevens would probably be the 2 $5,000 golfers. And then I talked about Laird a little bit at 6,100. I faded him on Sunday because everything that he had done, he was one of the biggest overachievers in my model, which I worry about that a little bit. He ends up, quite frankly, he kicked Chan Kim's ass when all was said and done. I ended up losing by 3. It got within 1. Chan Kim lost over 4 strokes putting. That's exactly how I lose a matchup every single time is I'll take the quality ball striker and I'm usually trying to find those deviations. And, if Kim can just be neutral with the putter, I win that matchup. So that's kind of the ideal outcome there. But my model really like Laird this week. So it might have been a little putter heavy for him, but good course history, good current form for the most part of what I'm looking at.
And I think his short game has been pretty good anyway, Spencer. Like he's trending that way.
Yeah, he was. I wrote about that actually in my Action Network article. It's like he didn't need to overachieve to the degree that he overachieved. And that's kind of one of the things, like I'm taking his baseline and I'm comparing it to what he actually produced. And he was one of the largest overachievers. But with that being said, we had also seen that for a handful of events where he's doing this over and over again. And I don't want to start relying on that factor of your game because that's where it burns up in your face and everything falls apart. But the numbers for me, like from an overall rank perspective, he's 25th overall, Byron. That's a wild output.
He's been missing like tons of cuts prior to like the Cognizant, but it's all been short game, Spencer. Like him and Russell Henley are doing the same shit where they're just deciding ball striking be damned. Let's go and chip and putt our way to victory on the PGA Tour. And the thing is, it's still been like neutral on the ball striking front. So who the heck knows, dude? And you know what, Spencer, with a guy like Martin Laird, he's not going to spike week with approach play.
No,
he's going to have a spike week with the putter or chip in a million times. Like that's how you can get in to the top 10s and things with like low level golfers like this, right?
That's where you can get that weird profile that all of a sudden hits. And I mean, just to add to the mix here, if we're looking for other intangibles that he brings to the mix, top 25 in my model in good drive percentage over his last 24. So that gives you some of that recent run. And then 4th in my model in birdie or better percentage when being aggressive in these spots. So this is a risk taker that can produce birdies. He also can produce implosion potential if he's not chipping in from around the green. But I think for the price, you get a rather savvy play that, like, my model thinks he's better from safety perspectives, and that's going to come from the multiple made cuts in a row and the course history outside of what he had produced last year. There's just a safer profile mix than a lot of these guys that we're talking about, but the statistical profile wasn't too shabby. Like for a pure upside ranking, 44th overall for a $6,100 golfer. We're still talking about a player whose value just from an upside number that I don't think is going to carry. I mean, right now, I hate giving numbers on this show because it just changes so drastically from tonight to tomorrow. Like I'll update my sheet and you'll see 10% moves on some of these names, but I have them sub 5% right now. We'll see if that number continues.
I mean, I'm looking at Martin Laird and I'm trying to figure out, do I want to bet him like top 5 at 30-1? You know, like, or outright at 150-1. Just to me, the fact that his short game is spiking like that, Spencer, didn't he win this Summerlin, the Shriners, putting his brains out?
Yeah, he has found success, first of all, in these very similar TPC courses in the past. He usually plays great golf in some of these windier, more desert-like type of fields. We get Texas here, but you're going to get some of that heat and wind. Yeah, I mean, this sort of a run for him, whether it's at TPC Summerlin or, you throw him in Arizona or some of these places, like he can find high-end success to where I don't have it up in front of me right now, and I probably couldn't in a second. I think he's dominated TPC Summerlin over the course of time.
Yeah.
And I think this is a comp course for the most part.
Yeah, he's had, for Martin Laird standards, Spence, 29th, 30th, 36th, 11th at this golf course. And I just found it 200-1 on him, and it's going in.
I think that's a good price.
I just bet Martin Laird at 200-1. So here we go. Lots of fun on the show. I like Martin Laird, man. I think at $6,100, definitely will be looking to play him if we don't make him too popular. Any other names, Spencer? Let's kind of knock out the 6 and 7K range, and then we can chat a bit of futures and Masters stuff. Eric Cole, I'll be going back to. I think he's, it's time. He came through really nicely. Not playing the greatest golf again, but he's finding his form, and I like it when he plays lots of golf. This will now be his 4th or 5th straight start. I think he needs like a long ass runway to get back into the mode, So made the cut again last week, so you'll be playing 8 rounds of golf, hopefully in the next, last 11. Denny McCarthy interests you? I know that there's as a DFS option, I feel like he's going to come in severely under-owned. Guy can chip and putt. He's volatile. T4 or T18, sorry, T20, yeah.
I mean, at the right ownership percentage, as I keep saying, anybody's playable. Yeah. I always worry about McCarthy's upside a little bit in any of these events. He will be leverage over options like McNeely, Van Roy, and Glover. I think they're going to be very popular. I'd probably, though, if directly comparing, and I mean, let's see where ownership lands, I'd probably rather play Bo Hostler.
Yes, Texas, right? Bo Hostler in Texas, as well as a definite smash. 4th year in 2022. And he like sculled one out the bunker, like while he was in contention. Like Bo Hostler under pressure, man, is crazy to watch. By the way, I wanted to mention about Thomas Dietrich, similar arc to Steven Jaeger. We started seeing Steven Jaeger hit those eject buttons hard, in round 3, round 4, and then he started not, like kind of coasting through those rounds. Dietrich, this was one of the best performances he's had. Because I think what it was last year at this tournament where he shot like at 86 or something. So I think it'll be interesting to see what he gets up to, man. I don't think he's not in the field this week, is he?
No, but it is that. And I mean, I even talked about it with Jaeger. It's that maturation process that occurs of a golfer where you put yourself in contention enough times and you hope that you don't build a scar tissue that you can't get past. Like some are more brutal than others, depending on exactly how you lose it. But I didn't think Jaeger had been quite close enough in a lot of those starts outside of the one this year, I guess, where I believe he came in 3rd. But other than that, I mean, then you can throw Dietrich into that mix there too. Like there's a lot of golfers that have been close that just haven't gotten the pieces done. Let me do this, Byron. We haven't talked about the $7,000 golfers. We can keep this simple. I'll throw out a name. You can give me an explanation. You can give me a yes or no, whatever you want to do with it. Yes or no to Bo Hostler?
Yes. Texas.
Yes or no to Maverick McNeely?
Yes. Playing great.
I think he's one of the better plays in the 7,000s. He's going to be popular. I think it's rightfully so there.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yes or no to Mark Hubbard?
No.
We talked about Eric Cole. I think we are both in there. Yes or no to Christian Bezuidenhout?
Ownership dependent answer.
I think
I like him, but just also T13, T9 in his last 2. We've been seeing Bezzy kind of get a little more comfortable in that T27, T33 spots. I mean, he's not messing around now, dude, and I kind of like this venue for him.
I worry a little bit that he's the lower end profile of, which I guess is a good thing. It's the guy who's won it twice. But the lower end profile of Corey Connors for cheaper. But I think people are going to really
much better.
Yeah, well, a much better putter than we're looking at with Connors. I mean, Connors has spikeability on this course, which is kind of where he's won. But Bezuidenhout is a unique candidate just because I guess more of the comparison I'm making, Byron, like than game types there would be when you look at their skill set and you throw it to the side. And you just find like the lack of high-end potential that we've historically gotten from them. I mean, Connors wins this tournament and doesn't necessarily produce a lot of top 10s, but Bezuidenhout has recently, which is kind of what the intriguing part is on him. I'm just afraid that the ownership is going to be very heightened because you get a golfer. It's the same answer we keep talking about, that people like these names that are better cash game plays than they are GPP targets. And Bezuidenhout could be the one that ends up burning potentially me on this, but I'm probably going. It's ownership dependent. I don't want to give an answer.
Exactly. Like we like him if we like him. We just don't want to like him as everyone likes him. That's how it goes. He's also working with that Fit for Golf guy, Spencer, the guy that Jaeger's working with.
Oh, nice.
Mike on Twitter, Fit for Golf, is busy. So if he can get his distance figured out, because that's one of his biggest issues. And I think that's a very similar profile to kind of Jaeger in a way, So if Bezzy can get his distance figured out, dude, imagine Christian Bezuidenhout, the way he's hitting his irons right now, hitting drives 310 yards.
Yeah.
That's scary. That's top 5 stuff versus this crap that's in the 30s all the time. So
Here's the thing about Bezadenhout, to give another negative, I guess, why if the ownership's high, I'm not going to play him. And it just goes to the exact thing you're talking about of his lack of, I don't think that Bezadenhout is necessarily quote unquote short off the tee. I think he has a lack of an ability to be aggressive off the tee. And when you look at the aggression numbers, I mean, it's just horrible across the board. 147th on par fives, 116th overall, 112th when you take aggressive stances on these birdie or better courses. Does have, though, if you're looking for a number that is a little bit better than that, just pure aggression rate, he was just outside the top 50.
Nah, that's noisy. Off the other stuff that you mentioned, Spencer, it's just...
Well, that's the general feel around it. But maybe that aggression number moving forward, like that pure aggression number, let's see if he can build on that. Because if that number can start getting into like the 20s or the 30s and everything sees a spike, you get a much different profile. But 128th in my model and weighted total driving, like that's going to take the lack of distance that he brings to the mix here.
Yeah. You know, he's definitely worth keeping an eye on, though, because, man, if we can see that distance just jump, that can change the aggression. You know, that extra 10 yards changes carry distances over bunkers. You're hitting drive instead of 3-wood, you know, like a lose off the tee. But, you know, we've had this discussion about Bezzy with the stuff. So
at what point can we get either Christian Bezadenhout to come on the show and tell him, hey, Bez, if you want to win a golf tournament, this is what you need to do. We'll just take a very minimal fee. I mean, whatever percentage of the purse, we can discuss it off air. We could change his life.
Dude, change his life. The guy needs to just come onto the RotoBaller PGA show, and it's going to solve. You're going to break through on the PGA. It's just how it's going to go. I mean, we've literally told Steven Yeager what to do too, so it's all good. You know, Bezzy, if you're listening, come on, soek for you. Tom Kim, Spencer, seems like an ideal kind of course fit. You know, the guy's hub down in Texas. Russell Henley, Spencer. Brian Harman, Spencer. Brian Harman, does he have a bit of a bounce back? The irons are like peaking.
I think Harman's fine at the right ownership percentage. I had the exact fair price from him, exactly where he was at 8,600. So I think at the right ownership percentage, if you can get leverage there, he's fine. Henley, I'm probably out on this week.
I think he'll be popular because he's like a Connors prototype, but he's not anymore. We've discussed his short game transcendencies.
If I was going to go, and I'd probably rather bet on like the pure upside numbers, some of those aggressive totals, the Tom Kim ability at TPC Summerlin. Like if I'm using that as a comp course, I think Tom Kim is a value at the price because of what we've seen this year. Don't love the last three going 60-second, 50-second miscut.
Yeah, he's not.
I'm sorry, withdraw. But not safe would be the general assessment there.
Yeah, but dude, his major track record, Tom Kim's, is incredible. As short as it is, like I'm very excited for him this Masters. I hope he's healthy going into it because it's gonna be fun to watch. Myron saying he wished it was a co-sanctioned event that would give a DP World Tour and PGA guy one final crack at the Masters. I don't know. This is the PGA Tour, Myron. Okay, we look after our own here. I'm just kidding. Who is the DP World Tour player to play the best this week, Spencer? Or like foreign international player, or
let's see who's the. Do you have one off the top of your head right now?
I don't. I was waiting for you to answer that question.
I mean, I'm scrolling through. I don't have anybody in the top 30 right now. I mean, does Nikolai Højgaard count? He's more PGA Tour now, but
no, like I'm saying, like recent, not like a Rory, like I'd say like a recent guy from the DP that I think, maybe has a crack this week. I think Perez has flashed a little bit. Whereas Højgaard is broken, dude. Like he's not playing good golf.
He's completely broken. I guess with Højgaard, it'd be one of those situations where I'm betting on the youth and his ability to turn it around and his long-term upside that my model believed he had before this negative turn that we've seen from him. But very obvious numbers in my model. When he hits, he hits. When he misses, he's going to miss the cut. So it would probably be him. And there's really not anybody all that close, if we're being honest.
It's weird. There's not a lot of them in this field. I feel like this is a pretty good field, actually, of middle class golfers.
Maybe like if we go deeper, and I don't think he's as good as Højgaard, but like we could go to Rio.
It's yeah, sure. Again, upside very much there. The guy's won, on the DP, so he can absolutely do it. But it's so crazy, Spencer, how these guys struggle to come from Ryan Fox. He's playing in the Masters. He's playing in the Masters, and he doesn't even belong on the PGA Tour right now, if you ask me. Like, his form is atrocious.
I think Ryan Fox was the lowest rated player that I had in the $6,000 section this week, which is kind of showing that even at the $6,200 price, you're not getting the upside that you think you're getting. And he has decimated some of my season-long teams. I got stuck in this really weird spot where I didn't have enough players for these designated or these elevated events. And I started picking and choosing these names that were like inside of the top 35, 40 in the world that, if you get into the top 30, all of a sudden you're in all these elevated events. And I just keep playing Ryan Fox every single week because I don't have enough players, and it's just miscut. I had to cut him last week. I was like, I don't even care at this point. I will pick up the random Joe Schmo from the waiver wire and play that person instead.
Yeah. No, but I'm glad you cut him because I'm also done touching that. I bet him to shoot over 71.5 on Friday in the wind. Shoots level par, a stroke better than he did in breathless conditions on Thursday. And then
he blows up on the weekend, and I don't know what place he came in, but he was like last of the people who made the cut, or very near that.
It's been disgusting. It's like he doesn't have it right now. So, but he's playing in the Masters. So let's chat about that, Spencer. It's Masters futures time. I've pulled it up. I told you earlier, I bet a guy by the name of Brooks Koepka for a Masters win. I try to bet the Miami Masters double back-to-back. I feel like that makes a ton of sense. I can totally see Brooks winning this week's Live tournament and then winning the Masters. I have got zero statistical analysis for this. I'm just kind of going off the fact that the guy hasn't had any major feel, hasn't had any major juice since the Open. He's been an amazing major player. It's just a 24. If you told me like you walk away from the PGA Championship, Spencer, and you say Brooks Koepka is going to be 20-1 at the Masters, what would you say?
I mean, with Koepka's major pedigree that he has shown us, and I'm never a Koepka guy, and he seems to burn me more than any single player on tour. But I think the one interesting note to at least throw out there for the Masters when we're trying to number shop and figure out where value is, the bottom of this board, like what you get 90 something players in this tournament every single year. I don't know exactly what we have right now off the top of my head, but
the last
91. Yeah. I mean, give or take on that is usually where we're at. The bottom of the board, you always have these random players down at the bottom that just like the Jose Marie Olazabals and I don't think Sandy Lyle's coming back this year, is he? But like, it's names like that. Like it's all these guys that are the former champions that really have no right to be there at this point. And it's more of just a victory tour of when they won it 30 years ago. And like, that's one of the things inside of my, like I was talking about at the beginning of the show, I run 7 things that you can't do. One of the things is you can't be older than 45 and actually win. So that removes all of those names that we're talking about. And unfortunately, like, don't shoot the messenger here. It also removes Tiger Woods from the mix. So,
ooh, well, I would be shocked, Spencer, if he won it this year. So he's just not in good enough health right now, I would imagine, to win a Masters.
While he knows every single bit of undulation and all the little places that you can miss, to me, that's more of like, okay, he made the cut. He came in 31st place. He came in 20th place. Like, if he does that, that's incredible. I just don't think he has the actual upside to win. He just doesn't play enough golf more than any other reason. Yeah. He enters these tournaments extremely cold, and it just so happens that the tournaments that he's playing are all the most difficult courses and all the most challenging events that
Innovated,
you can have.
you know.
Yeah, you're never getting these like simplistic courses to where we're not talking about green speeds and runoff areas like Augusta here, where if you're just a little bit off on your touch, all of a sudden you're finding issues. My thought at the Masters is, if you made me like bet made cut or miscut, no matter what my model said, I would say Tiger finds a way to make the cut at the Masters, just because the bottom is weak enough and his ability to get up for the big contest is great. But even like with that being said, what are the chances that when he makes the cut that he doesn't make it through all 4 days? We saw that, I believe, last year, and that's always a problem that you run into with Tiger. So like for DFS purposes, I'm going to be out. For betting purposes, the number's always going to be too short. But there's a lot of interesting trends. And like I talked about, I'll release it in my article in a couple days, but you have to be a certain golfer, and it really narrows it down quite fast of the names that have a legitimate chance to win this event.
Another one, Spencer, that I'm going to be doing this as well for the Masters, because I went through yours and wanted to check if you have it in there. You have to have played at the Masters 3 times.
Yep, that's
Scotty Scheffler won it on his third go. So repeat history here is essential. So anybody new is essentially, there's a good chance they finish top 20 if they're a really good golfer, or a top 10 like Sahith and Cam Young, or I don't think Cam, I think he missed it, but there's certain good Tom Kim, like guys that play well in majors will play well here, but you need course history. You need, that experience at Augusta.
I know we're an hour and a half into the show. I will run through these very quickly now that we've had this discussion. If you're out there, you want to write these down, you want to run and model yourself, you can come up with some of these answers. So you can't be over 45. You have to be making at least your 3rd appearance. You can't be outside of the top 50 of that field in driving distance. Can't be outside of that field of the top 50 around the green. Same answer with 3-putt percentage outside of the top 50, can't be there. Inside of the top 50 for par 5 birdie or better percentage. And you also have to have a top 30 at the venue in one of the last 3 years of playing the event. So
a top 30?
A top 30.
Yes. That's very important too. Recent form at Augusta. I totally agree.
Exactly. For winners only on that answer. You're going to find names that are going to pop into the top 10 that are going to be able to produce without that criteria. I don't think that removes them from the DFS side of the equation. But when we're talking strictly about winning a golf event, you have to have those answers, and you have to be inside of those ranges in each one of those categories. At least historically, it's 5 for 5 right now. That's a very small sample size, but I did trace it back a year or two before that, and it also fit there. So we're really like 7 for 7 if we're being like quite frank with what the percentage is, but we'll call it 5 for 5 because it's since I've been writing the article.
No, but it makes sense, right? And Myron was mentioning he likes Brian Harmon. I don't think Brian Harmon would he rank inside the top 50 in driving distance? It would be a very close call, in my opinion. Myron.
My guess would be no. I mean, I think he's too short off the tee,
short.
But
he would have had, if Brian Harmon was playing during the time Zach Johnson and Trevor Immelman won, he would, playing the golf he is now, that was the time for him to win the Masters. It's not anymore. Like, it's all about hammering driver 320 to the dogleg corner and going from there.
I can tell you what he was. I can tell you what he was last year. He was 55th last year, so he just would have missed out. But that's also like, it doesn't mean that he can't find high-end success with that if you can put together enough of those other layers there. And let's see if he's added any extra distance to where he can jump up a little bit further. But I mean, I would think he would miss because of that reason if we're talking about win equity.
But he's also a major winner, so that helps. So transitioning into something I did, Spence, is looking at Joaquin Niemann, who everyone was trying to bet was betting futures on for the Masters after he'd gone on that run, on Live and won a few random Asia tournaments. Guy's playing good golf, but his best major finish is T16. I took a look at Masters winners over the last 10 years. I think 8 of them had finished second or better in a major leading up to that. And then the other 2 were like 6th and 9th. So like, you have to have had a top 10 in your major track record to finish first at Augusta. over the last 10 starts. And he's only got a 16th year last year, so it's moving in the right direction, but I think his game is it's separated so far from his major experience and major contention. So it's going to be really interesting to see which one shines, Spence.
I also think there was a time and a place to bet this. You would have been betting it at a total, like if we're talking purely outright numbers here, you would have been betting it at a total when he wasn't even in the field at that moment. But there were triple digit figures that you could have gotten at a given time. You look now, that number has been completely suppressed down into what I don't even, you can tell me, Byron, what
31.
The total is.
There's 22s out there.
Yeah. I just think he's too low, but I will say this, the last category that I run to try to determine the winner is, have you had a top 30 result at the venue during one of the last 3 times you had played it? He was the one name last year who missed it. Well, the 16th place finish that you just mentioned in the major did come at the Masters. So he would qualify based off of that reason. I don't know if the other metrics necessarily will. And we have this wonky distribution of like what these players are actually doing on the Live Tour right now. And, I don't necessarily, you can't really find numbers for the most part. And even the numbers that you can find, I don't know how much I trust a lot of them, but I just think it's a different bet at 50 to 1 plus versus
22.
These 22 to 1 numbers you're talking about now.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to grab a number at 50, at 60 on a guy that likely won't win, sure. Like 22, I would be shocked if the guys that were betting him at 60 bet him again. Probably 10% of those people would bet him again, maybe 5, We'll wait and see. I'll jump ahead, Spencer. I want to just drop one more future for a major. And it's one of the craziest things I noticed looking at Sam Burns's major track record, I was looking at like who gained the most total strokes in a specific of the 4 categories at a specific event, which means that it includes US Opens. Sam Burns gained the most strokes out of every single category at a specific event, second to only one person, and that was putting at the Valspar for Sam Burns. Hideki Matsuyama has gained more strokes on approach at the US Open than Sam Burns has gained putting at the Valspar.
Wow.
And that's like a massive sample size, dude. If you pull up Hideki Matsuyama's US Open strokes gained approach numbers, it is mind-blowing. He's gained like 19 or 18 strokes in the last 2 US Opens on approach, dude. So I bet Hideki Matsuyama at the US Open 46 to 1 at FanDuel. Like that number is incorrect for someone that has that, like he just has this affinity. He's like, US Open week, yes, peak Tiger iron play right now. Let's go. Like it's just what Hideki does there. So a fascinating, like, if I did it by course, that would have never have shown up. But by event, US Open, his Hideki Matsuyama is like bread and butter, man.
Tee to green mastery for the most part at these US Opens also. A little hit and miss with the driver, I guess, but like 10 strokes last year, tee to green at the US Open, 5.5 in 2021. Don't exactly have strokes gained data in front of me here in 2022, but 12.6 in 2020. It's just the putter kind of ruined him in a couple of those spots. He lost 6 in 2023, 4.2 in 2020. I think that's a great number for a golfer that's trending at this point. And he's a major championship winner.
Yeah, exactly. And he's won this year already. So he's like got that form. He's got that confidence. He loves thick rough. Yeah. Like he's so good at that stuff. So I'm all in on Hideki. 46 to 1. That's like the same concept as Neiman, basically, so, but a bit more validity, I think there's a bit of history behind that.
And it's a better price than we're talking about now with where Neiman's at. So is that Hideki number still there?
I believe so. I bet it like literally on Saturday night.
That's where did you say that was at? FanDuel?
I will double check for you real quick, pulling it up right now. But their futures market is the majority of the best numbers is for FanDuel. Hideki, 46 at FanDuel. He's 40 at DraftKings, 28 at Bet365.
Well, all right. You have convinced me to do what we will call an in-pod play here. Hideki Matsuyama 46 to 1 at the US Open. I think that's an incredible number for a golfer that's really trending right now. And that price is not going to last.
No, it's wrong. It's wrong. But whether or not he wins, who knows? But that's the US Open. I feel like he's he could win one. The way he's like been looking, you never know. You wouldn't be shocked if he did, I would say. So, Spencer, gun to your head right now. Masters future, bet one. I know you're not a big. We'll preface this with this: like, you're not a big fan of Masters futures because it's difficult for content. But we're doing a bit of content right now. If someone was going to bet a Masters future, they really wanted to, who would you suggest they go to?
Well, what's going to end up happening is I'll just take Rory at 11-1, and I'll end up losing my money like every single year. I'm scrolling through the odds right now, trying to see if there's anybody who stands out. I mean,
how about we make it, if you want, a long shot? That way you've still got tons of space on your card. Like call it like 50-1, or if you like someone in the 30s or 20s, feel free.
What are your thoughts? I mean, to me, I don't know if I believe he's going to win a major championship, and I don't think he might disqualify himself because I don't think he's played this 3 times, although I could be wrong. I mean, Thegal is short game and distance.
Second time.
Yeah, so that probably will disqualify him based off of that. Although, I mean, look at what he did last year here. Yeah. Like, it might not matter. He might be able to buck that trend.
Yeah, I would bet him top 5 at the Masters for sure.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to agree with Darbo here. I'm going to say just Rory for the sake of the show, just so I can get that out there, whether I have the ticket on it or not. That can be decided next week. But I love pain when it comes to Rory McIlroy. Like, I'm going to be so upset when he wins and I don't have the ticket after betting him 10 times around. So, to be honest though, I haven't run enough numbers yet, Byron, to give you like a sophisticated answer to it.
Fishing.
I think Thegal, though, if you remove that quantifiable metric that I'm talking about, that would eliminate him. I do think his around the green game and his distance and his ability to spray the ball off the tee does fit very well for this venue, more so than a lot of these players. Like, that's a very similar answer that we could talk about with Cameron Smith or Jordan Spieth or some of these short game wizards that are able to get up and down from everywhere and kind of just like that lack of ability to find fairways in the ability that they do, like, gets a little bit masked here from the overall projection of their profile.
Yeah. So here in year 3 is an absolute smash play, Spencer.
Just give us another year.
Give us a 2025 Masters future. Let's bet Sahith right now. Like at whatever you'd be. He's currently 55-1. So he's been playing great, man. He's been playing such good golf. He's really, really tuning into a really good golfer. Live golfer, Spencer, the best live golfer that plays well at the Masters?
My feeling is always Dustin in these spots.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I think Cameron Smith makes a lot of sense of a player that can find. I worry with a lot of these players that I don't know exactly where they're at. Koepka's the one that produces every single time, so you probably have something there with your ticket.
Yeah. We'll see, dude. It's interesting. I feel like 20-1 on Koepka doesn't limit me that much. You can still. I'm not betting Scotty, and no one is 7-1 right now.
Can I throw a name out there? And I don't know where he would get removed from the equation here, or if he would get removed from the equation. But I mean, you talked about it a couple weeks ago, and it seems very impossible to believe that his first win would come at the Masters. But Cameron Young,
dude, it's his 3rd start. I mean, I'm sure he checks all the boxes. I would be shocked if he doesn't, because he's got the distance. He finished well last year. It's his 3rd start. He's under 45. Doesn't look like he's under 45, guy. No, but he is. And 50-1.
You could convince me on that. I guess for the sake of show, and I don't even know if I'll have a ticket on him, but I more often than not end up with a ticket on Cameron Young. Usually not in major championships, but
it would be such a like the guy can't win the Valspar, but like a 3 weeks, like the anti-Wyndham Clark, like just completely go from sucking at the Valspar when you needed to winning the Masters. I feel like that's a soul you would sell 1,000 times if you wanted to. One thing I want to mention before we bring up one more thing, and then we can get out of here if we need to. Darbo's mentioning some stuff about Liv guys in recent form. He says there's going to be 4 guys from Liv that fit inside the top 10 at the Masters. I wouldn't be surprised. They have all the Masters champions there. And Masters is the highest course history thing in the world. Like, there's no course on this planet that has more correlatory properties than the Masters.
Well, yes, exactly. And I mean, it's kind of like we talked about at the beginning of the show, where that perception of even what we have talked about in a lot of these spots of we don't know where we're at. This is why we're getting these increased prices on those golfers. Somebody's going to perform from that group.
Yeah.
And multiple of them are probably going to perform. It's just figuring out which are the names that are going to, and can you get a number on them that makes enough sense to actually put an outright ticket on, if we're talking specifically outright betting here. But I think in general, the live golfers, this sentiment around them pushes them down the board or up the board, whichever way you want to look at it in price, where you're getting a better number on the ticket to where, you know, a guy like Dustin, if Dustin had form entering this event, like PGA Tour form that we're talking about, he's 18-1, 16-1, but he's a live golfer that we don't know where he's at, and we don't really know what he's doing in his life. And all of a sudden he's like 35+1. And I mean, that's one example of the mix there, but there's a lot of those answers that come into play with every single live golfer that we want to discuss.
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't have information. And the whole point of this is, how do you award world points to these people when we are golf handicappers by nature and we can't even tell you how good these golfers are playing right now? You know, like, that's the thing. So interesting concept there, Spence. I have a Xander Schauffele majors future. Top 20 in all 4 majors. He's currently finished top 20 in 7 straight. If he does it, it'll be 11 straight, which is unlikely, but it's 8.5 to 1. I grabbed it out at Bet365. And it's just, I feel like that's the major, that's like the prop for Xander. He's not going to win one, but he's going to top 20 all 4 of those sons of guns. And
what is he up to now? 42 consecutive made cuts?
Yeah.
Something like that. He's producing at a level that we talk about it. And I just mentioned, when it comes to Dietrich Jaeger, you put yourself in contention enough times, you eventually win one. Unless your name is Xander Schauffele, then you never win a golf tournament anymore. But, you know, look, it's the answer that we talked about with Finau for a very long time when Finau wasn't winning. It really takes one subtle change and you get across the finish line one time when you weren't supposed to. I still think Xander's stigma around his inability to win usually gets you a better price. Kind of like in the same answer, like the live golfers, we don't know where they're at, so you get a better price. Xander, you know exactly where he's at, and he's not winning these golf tournaments, so the public doesn't want to back him, so he gets an increased price in that territory. I get suckered in quite frequently to the Xander Cantlay duo. I think I'm out on Cantlay because I just haven't seen anything from him enough to warrant getting behind him in a lot of these spots, but I don't know, Byron. So good, like at the right number, Xander, it's always enticing at the right price.
Yeah. I'm hammering top 5. Like, there's no doubt I'm hammering.
What is Xander right now for the Masters? And I think that number will probably go up when the week starts.
Xander Schauffele to win the Masters is 2041.
Let me ask you this. Let's say that number gets 30 or above. Are we still no there?
I'm just a perennial no on him. You know, like, I will bet the next one if that makes any sense, because I know he can do it. It'll be at worst, it'll be at the same odds he's always been. If he wins a tournament now, is he going to go back, going to go to 10-1, or is he going to be in that 12-14-1 range he's always in?
Well, it's like a very standard answer to what Thomas was for a while, to where Thomas would be that one large drifter on the board every single time that he would lose some form and not win golf tournaments, and would drift out into that 25-30-1 range. Like, I hit him at the Players Championship. He was, I think, 30 or 33-1 that week. You know, I think Xander is kind of in this range now where markets were initially pricing him at like 14-1 to start the year. And this number has steadily increased over the span of the last couple months of his inability to win. But I don't know, Byron, if you could give me a 28-1 plus and my model ends up spitting out that there's value, I think at some point that the stigma around his name, you get a better price than you're supposed to get, even if maybe that's just a model breaking outlook to where he just doesn't win golf tournaments, unfortunately. And no matter how much value you get on a ticket, if it doesn't win, it doesn't win.
Well, dude, we thought that about Jaeger for a while, man. And Xander's better than Jaeger, but also at the same time, he's way worse when it matters. So I don't know. I don't know what to say to you there outside of I like the top 20 bets, that's the way to go for him. He's just go look at his data golf profile, dude. It's frightening. It is a scary, scary sight. Like just looking at his recent history, it is just green. It is the most green you'll ever see outside of his Scheffler profile. Yeah. Crazy stuff. Spencer, anything else?
No, it was a fun show tonight. Hopefully we can continue the momentum. It's been fun doing this show with you, Byron. And I think that, the more information that we can provide, and obviously we want people in the chat asking questions. So never feel like any question that you have we will answer anything that you have out there. And we're just trying to provide information. So thank you for everybody who does tune in and makes us a part of your weekly research process, or just wants to come in here and have a conversation with us every single Monday. Like any of those deals work perfectly fine with us. It's a lot of fun chatting to everybody. So I look forward to doing it again next Monday, and it's going to be a big show at the Masters, and hopefully we can ride it in with back-to-back outrights.
Dude, that would be awesome. I will have to make sure that I give a few more quickly and promptly, but it's just going to be Benny on. That's all it's going to be. That's due. So awesome stuff. Use code TOFF, use code Maniac if you're in the mood to get onto the premium side of things over at RotoBaller. We really appreciate you doing that for us. Hitting the like button, as always, goes a long way. Subscribing to the channel, the whole good shebang stuff over there. So as always, folks, thank you so much. I am Byron, the Model Maniac, Spencer Aguiar at TOFF Sports. We are the RotoBaller PGA show, and let's go have a great week. Peace.